Welcome to the Smart Thinking Podcast. This is my dad, Ted.
Welcome to the Smart Thinking Podcast. I'm your host, Ted Knightsky. Well, this interview did not go the way I had expected it. I thought I would be having a 25-minute, 30-minute conversation with a man who is a known motivational speaker in the corporate and educational settings. He's funny, and I had researched him a little bit, watched a couple of videos, and thought, well, we'll talk about what guides him, what fuels him, and what makes him funny. And instead, I found a brother from another mother, a guy who, like me, and as you will hear, we bounced all over the place, easily distracted with each other's intellectual capacity, our senses of humor, and just our life experiences. I want you to listen to Tim talk, though, because he is coming at the idea of educational motivation and life from three different perspectives. One, as a man and a student and a child. Two, as a former educator. And three, now as a father and a motivator. I guess that's probably like five. But either way, take a listen, enjoy this. And at the end, I'm going to leave you with probably the most impactful thing he had said to me that stuck with me all week long. Welcome to the Smart Thinking Podcast. I am joined today by Tim Clue, who is a motivator, an inspirer, a funny guy, and an intentional engager. So, Tim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Ted. I work Knightsky, right? Did I say that right? How's that going?
That's perfect. Yeah, it's excellent.
If we were doing Wilson training, we would divide that up in two pieces, and I
correct.
Would take the first part and then say the second part.
Correct.
And then write it down.
Over and over and over
and
again.
Over again. Yes.
Yeah.
Knightsky. You even actually presented it to me because you know I'm a left-handed dyslexic rugrat, right? I'm a learning challenged kid with a lens at which everything I've done in the classroom is based on the teacher I never had.
That's awesome. And we're going to talk about that a little bit here. So, Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? What was your educational journey?
Yeah. So I'm not going to give out my age, but I'm old. Okay. Can we just say that? I'm older. I think I'm old as you. All right.
Well,
and I grew up.
I was going to say, let's go with that.
That's right.
Yeah. 60s, 70s child.
Thank you. Right. So yeah, I'm a 70s, 80s product of rural education. Like I said, you already heard my little bumper sticker there. I was an operationally challenged child in almost every aspect of what they now have categorized into, whether it's on the spectrum, ADHD and dyslexia. I think I had a combination of all three. And let me just tell you, looking for someone who understood dyslexia in the 70s and 80s is like looking for, let's say, a vegan at a NASCAR rally. Can I say that? Is that okay?
That's very fair. That's very fair.
And so that's where I'm from. I'm from a small rural flatlander town called Rochelle, 16 miles west of DeKalb. And, I was blessed in that the town was small enough that it had that net that wouldn't let you fall in between the cracks.
Yeah.
And I think that was a blessing. I had parents that, greatest generation parents that didn't care that their son was bringing home C's, D's, and F's as long as ever so often I brought home a B or an A. So I lived in that bipolar world of thinking I was uniquely smart and uniquely stupid.
Huh. I have a paradigm for you that I want you to think about because, as a person of influence who gets to be around people all the time, I regularly tell people I was born caffeinated, and right. That's a lot of people say ADHD, right? So, and listeners have heard me say this before. It's not a disability. It's a gift. And an ADHD kid's just got to find the person who understands that it's ADHG and then understand how to work with that, because people with unlimited energy and antsiness are curious and funny. And sometimes that doesn't fit the norm. So people have to like label it, and it's not a label. It's a uniqueness and it's a gift. What do you think of that?
Well, yeah, my head's popping. I got, you know what I've got. I got 100 sticky notes floating around the board, and I can't pick one off right now. But I'm going to pick one off. Right, first sticky note: the classroom, the educational industrial complex, is not set up for impatience and urgency. It's set up for regurgitation, or the 3 R's that should be dead: regurgitation, reiteration, and recitation. These R's need to go by the wayside, and we need to do, of course, more experiential, problem-based learning, more, society-based engagement, et cetera, et cetera. With that said, gee whiz, that's why I spent my entire 4th grade inside a refrigerator box, or most of it, because the teacher didn't know what to do with me. And it became this kind of blessed unintended consequence that changed my life. And we can talk about that later if you'd like.
Yeah, well, it's those defining moments in our formative years that, I've learned, having been a teacher and a principal and a superintendent, I've learned that children faced with that type of adversity from adults right off the bat have 2 choices. They can either succumb and believe it, or they can drive and overcome it. And again, that also takes the spark from other people. Yes. So with that, Tim, like, who are some of those people in your life as a kid who, as you were slipping, kind of grabbed your hand, pulled you up, and then and helped you be who you are?
I'm going to address that. I'm going to do a typical ADHD thing there. I'm actually going to backlog and say that the last point is that I find it insane that the classroom is set up to say that it wants leadership and leaders and collaboration. And the primary motive or motif, or let's say protocol, is a person standing up, looking down at kids sitting in chairs. Do you understand what's so ironically insane and duplicitous and not in alignment with what we say versus what we do? I find it maddening. And thankfully, there were some extracurricular activities that I was able to engage in that gave me my outlet. And we know those stories as well, whether it's band or the chess team or speech team or, debate team or whatever, right? Thankfully, these other more less structured elements that provide kids like me a place to flourish. And so anyway, now influences, right? Did I tag that correctly?
That was a wonderful transition.
Thank you, friend.
You're welcome.
It's called tagging, right? That's what we do. That's our gift. We can actually, when you actually know what you're dealing with, you can see the sticky notes. They slow down, and you can actually pick them off the bulletin board, right?
Correct.
So the one I'm going to pick off, oh, there's so many. How about Mrs. Alberts in 3rd grade, who it was her first year teaching, and she actually wrote on a report card, "I wish I would have had Tim after more teaching experience."
That's wonderful. Well, it's not wonderful for you, but that's a great life lesson for the educators listening. Be smart about what you put down, because Tim doesn't forget.
And then my 4th grade teacher put me in a refrigerator box and taught me what is it Margaret Mead that said it's not what we it's teach to the mind, right? Teach to the mind basically was the I'm paraphrasing the quote.
Sounds about right.
And they, upon putting me in that box, I was isolated for the first time, and I found my mind. I went from a 1st grade reading level where I could only read Charlie Brown Peanut books to a 3rd and then eventually a 4th grade reading level. And then you're gonna hear the rim shot coming up here. We talk a lot about the need for outside the box thinking. I think that's some dang good inside the box thinking. Right?
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it's amazing, because 3rd grade was a pivotal year for me too. I didn't necessarily struggle as a learner. I struggled as a behavioralist, following the rules. But I had the exact opposite, Tim. My third grade teacher's name was Mrs. Hummerding. She was 1,112 years old. I went to a Catholic grade school, and like the joke was that she actually taught the apostles, and she actually could masterfully handle hyper little kids.
Wow. And those are the blessed angels that we needed so desperately, right?
Yeah. She used to call them. So I was her postman. So my job, like about every probably half hour, 35 minutes, was she'd say, Teddy, go check my mailbox. So I had to walk down to the office, down the stairs, shoot down there, burn off some energy, come back. There's nothing in your mailbox, Mrs. Humberding. And then the office ladies would laugh because I was there. And then like 15 minutes later, I'd see somebody else in the class. Hey, go check my mailbox.
Right.
And it was just, today we call those interventions, meet the kid where they're at. But back then, that's just masterful teaching.
My consumer ed teacher, Mr. Romes in high school, would always begin the class by asking me to stand up and tell a joke, realizing that that would allow me to get that, to release that steam, right?
Oh, Tim, give me one of the jokes. Well, so what was your number one,
it's
joke
interesting
in high school?
What? No, you know what? As a person that did stand up for 25 years, it's so funny. I could not tell you for the life of me. I would literally just make an observation about I would do an impression. Usually it ended up this. I would do an impression of one of the teachers in the high school that he enjoyed. That was typically the bit. So it'd be very inside baseball. For me to do Mr. Brackmeyer, Mr. Clue, how are we doing today? My driver's ed teacher, but he was a wonderful man, and I'm not a bad driver. So that was essentially what I would do. Then there was in fifth grade, Miss Cazawiz, and she was the first teacher that kind of had that coolness, knew how to absorb and take a punch. And deliver it back, but in a way that you couldn't even feel it. Her name was Cazawiz, and it was spelled just like that, Cat-sa-wiz. And many of us called her Cat That Whizzed. And to which she wrote on the chalkboard and asked everyone to write a poem with these words in it, Cat That Whizzed. I still have the
That's
poem.
awesome. That's like teaching judo. Absorb that energy, turn it, and use it for your own opportunity.
Perfectly, metaphorically, and illustratively said, my friend. Very good. Yes, exactly. No, right?
Oh my gosh, Tim! This might be a 9-hour interview because we had a teacher by the name of No Wiki.
No Wiki, Mr. Wiki. I had Mr. Wiki. You had No Wiki.
Yeah. Well, my class rhymed it a little differently, and it's not appropriate for the podcast. But so
I got it. I think I got it.
Yeah. Yeah. It rhymes with wiki, begins with a D. But anyways, which got us in a tremendous amount of trouble. And she did not jujitsu with that. She kicked a lot of people out. Well, so Tim, tell me then, as you go through middle school, high school, like in your formative years, and what's your career path? What do you do? How do you take these gifts and little hurdles that you've been delivered and turn them into, the man that you've become?
It's interesting. I just stumbled upon, the many big books, thankfully, that have been written about the superpowers of dyslexia, all certain dyslexics that have gone on to achieve great things. And I thought, where were those books when I was going to school? I didn't even know I had dyslexia until I was in college, and I was I was doing an observation because I thought I wanted to be a teacher. Right? And so I had to observe a special ed teacher, and he was showing me how you do a basic diagnosis of dyslexia. They call it saccadic tracking, left to right eye movement. And as he's doing it to the young lad, he moves the pencil over to my eyes, pauses, and says, "How well do you read?" And at that point, I started to, become incommunicado and embarrassed and shamed but eventually he got it out of me. And then he changed my life because he sent me to a place that helped me figure out how to fix my eyes. Now, that doesn't answer your question, but hit me again with where we were headed.
Well, I'm going to go off of that for a second because what a nice little intervention in life to have, your pathway take you to this special education teacher who quickly recognizes in you the opportunity to help you.
Right. The other phenomena that I had is, and I always tell people when I do my connected classroom experiential SEL LOL adventures, what I try to make point of is that my story is not a curriculum or a program that we should be following. I am an anomaly. I am an accident. I am a gift of random things that occurred that allowed me to barely escape and not be selling Streetwise or offering Streetwise at the Walgreens outside on Halsted Street in Chicago. I am a thin line between possibility and the opposite of possibility. So what's cool is the other story I'll tell you, Ted, is that I had one superpower, I think, if any. And not every kid is blessed with this superpower. And it's just that I had a certain tenacity, a certain affability. People liked me, even though they all also wanted to throw me, over off the bridge and duct tape me. I was duct taped, by the way, duct taped a lot. You can't duct tape kids anymore. Every time I was duct taped, Ted, I thought, you know what? I deserve this. You know what? No, yep. I didn't even have a problem with it. One time I actually brought duct tape to school and pre-duct taped myself. That was another jujitsu move, right?
In anticipation.
Like, what are you going to do now? Come at me. What do you got?
Yeah,
what do you got?
yeah.
What do you got? What do you got, Miss Wiki? But no, what I'm going to tell you my superpower, and it's just like I said, I wasn't embarrassed to ask questions at an unbelievably nagging rate. The best story I have on this is that my Bradley University psych teacher, unfortunately on the first day, actually said to the class, a 300 hall lecture classroom experience, 101 psych, said, listen to me, if you do not understand anything that I say, you may raise your hand, ask a question, and we will answer it together until we both understand it. I'm not kidding you, Ted. I was booed by 299 students in that lecture hall because I raised my hand every single time I didn't understand the concept that he had written on the board. I was booed. How many college students do you know? I turned around and I celebrated it. I raised my hands. I'm like, what do you want to do? You want to mosh pit me to the back and, celebrate me as the one person that is admitting that I don't understand what learned helplessness is? Yeah. I don't know what it is. And oddly enough, there you go. So,
yeah, but that's super. Like you said, I'm gonna reframe your superpower there. The ability to advocate for yourself is such a deficit for so many people, and it takes so much courage to inquire. Tim, I find that the most intelligent people I know, when they come upon a word they've never heard before, a concept they've never heard, they have absolutely no
compunction. Huh? What? Huh?
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Tell me about that, because they're curious.
Yeah, exactly.
And curiosity can annoy a lot of people who just don't want meeting extenders and want to get the hell out of the environment. So, I guess I probably would have snuck up next to you in class and been like, hey, I've been wondering this. Will you mind asking this question for me?
Ah, that's funny. Yes. We would have been a good Mutt and Jeff, right?
Yeah. Well, when you said I brought the duct tape, it had me thinking of something. So I've always found that there are kind of two kinds of kids who live their life through improv. There are those who get themselves in a lot of trouble, and there are those who get everyone around them in trouble and are never in trouble themselves. I am the latter, because I would have an impulse hit me, and I'd be like, hey, it'd be funny if you said blah 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 right now, and then the guy next to me would be like, hey, blah blah blah, and the teacher'd go, get out of here. So which were you?
If we would have gone to the same school interchangeably, I think we would have spent the entire year either not in school or in detention. I was an extrovert by any definition, even though come to find out years later, that was kind of me compensating in my goofy way for some of the things that I didn't understand about myself,
And that's one of those misunderstandings that, those listeners who are in education, kids manifest or they act in certain ways. They present themselves in certain ways to either protect something or drop down the attention on another area. Like I can't tell you, Tim, how many kids I taught who were off the charts intelligent, who would act stupid to not get the attention of their intelligence. And then kids who struggled with compensating or with comprehension, who would act like they knew everything, but were clueless. And they would never come to a crossroads, and they would all play this game. So this authenticity that, guys like you have, where you sit and you ask those questions, I just need people to know that educators, leaders, we admire that because you can smell out the phonies. So go ahead.
No. Finish your thought, friend.
Well, what I was going to say is when you finish college, then what happens to Tim Clue? Like, how do we get to today?
Fortunately, I was on the speech team. I don't know if your audience knows this, but there are nationally competitive programs all over the United States. My ACT score, if anybody knows ACT, SAT, I took the ACT score. I was kicked out of the test because I asked for Lynn Childers' pencil, and they thought I was cheating. So I scored a 14. I want you to know that score does not get you into, even back in 1981, into any college in the United States. Fortunately, my speech teacher, who is no longer with us, Mr. Clark, wrote a letter and made a phone call. And then a gentleman named George Armstrong at Bradley University went down, spoke to a woman named Georgia, the secretary, and said, "Oh, Georgia, we're going to make an exception for this young man, and we're going to put him on probation." So I was only let into the school on a probationary, litmus test. I got out of my undergrad and was allowed to move on to my master's because I thought I literally walked upstairs. I lived in the basement, of the gentleman I just imitated, Mr. Armstrong, who let myself and another wonderful individual and lifelong friend live in his basement. Unheard of, right?
Yeah.
We also got a scholarship from Dick Versace, or we wouldn't have been able to finish our senior year. We didn't have enough money, nor did our parents.
Wow.
Dick Versace was an NBA analyst, also passed quite a few years ago, I think like 5 years ago. But it's also a special person, and anytime I can use his name, because he's one of those angels that just dipped down and made it possible. And then you're getting this idea when I'm telling you about the thin line, line. And then I literally walked upstairs. I'll never forget it. I walked upstairs to the basement of the person that was ahead of the Bradley University speech program. And I said, "George, what am I going to do?" Because I went to 4 years of school and I truly thought I had nothing to offer. I didn't want to be an actor at the time. I didn't think I could just suddenly walk into a comedy club and start making money, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know that that's not possible. I'm like, how do I monetize the lame communication degree and the skill sets? Because I still am not a confident writer yet, even though I've written a play now, and I'm still not a confident student at all, even though I was able to, figure it out and wiggle my way through undergrad. So here's what I do.
Huh.
He submits me to the master's program at EMU, and I attend classes and realize that I got to write a lot of papers, right? More papers than I've ever had to write in my life.
Right.
So I go to the kiosk and I see, we'll write papers. We'll write papers for a fee, right? And back in the day, this is analog, right? This is old school, baby.
Yeah.
You just like remember the dorm room, like you need a roommate or whatever.
Yeah. The schniblets of paper at the grocery store. Looking for a cat, rip it off, call the number.
Exactly.
I got a great job on one of those at my college.
So I tear it off and I call her up and I invite her to the Big Boy on Washtenaw, because that's where I was starting to work to make ends meet. And she's like, well, why do you want to meet? I said, I said, we just got to meet. I said, I'll tell you when I buy you lunch. So we meet and I said, all right, so you charge how much a page? She said $1.50. I said, B, I'm going to pay you. Now, keep in mind, when you're doing your master's, how old are you, Ted? I'm like, I think I'm 21, maybe,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, probably a little older, but yeah, totally get it.
21 and a half, 22 max. And I looked at her and I said, B, I'm going to pay you $2.50 a page. And she said, why would you do that? I said, because you're going to help me. You're going to be the reason I graduate.
Wow. And
every dollar that I made at that Big Boy in Washtenaw went to a collaborative process in which I would handwrite out on a legal pad all my papers. So they were my thoughts, they were my effort, they were my research.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had an English teacher assemble them into, she was kind of the first Chat GPT-3, if you think about it, right?
Yeah, right. She's AI for you.
She was my individual high vertical AI. Yeah.
Tim, I gotta stop because I'm freaking out here for a couple of reasons. One, you talked about this a little bit before. I actually started college as a theater major with the intention of doing improv comedy. When I became a teacher, when I graduated from my undergraduate program, became a teacher, I actually went to 2 open mic nights. I didn't tell anyone I know. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've ever recorded that. And I got up on stage. I had no bits. And I just got up and told stories about being a teacher.
Yeah.
And it was some of the most electrifying feelings I've ever had, with people just laughing at, inappropriate things kids wrote on desks and stuff like that. And you had B, I had Furby. So Furby was my co-teacher. I taught high school social studies and middle school I taught high school history, middle school social studies. Kathy Furbis, God rest her soul, taught 8th grade language arts. I struggled because I have a whole different pathway. I was an at-risk kid, lots of trauma, blah, blah, blah. And I had to take 8 years to get my undergraduate degree because I had to redo high school at my own expense. When I entered my master's degree program, the very first paper I submitted wasn't even graded. It just said do over. So I go to my professor and I said, what's the problem? I have a history degree. I've done tons of writing and research, blah, blah. And he said, listen, you write like a child. Your grammar's horrible. This is horrible. This is horrible. So just like you, I would type out, I didn't handwrite it, but I type out my papers. I would hand them to Furby, and for a donut, she would edit it regardless of the length.
Wow. It's life, right?
Yeah.
Well, and isn't that what remote learning taught us? Dogs, cats, ferrets, lizards could all be a part of the
correct.
They actually found out that those disruptions, just like you or me, that I was a disruption sometimes in the classroom, that those same disruptions offered a release and were helpful.
They humanized us.
And they also provided, actually, if you study the brain, MIT figured this out, that the average person it has to have a little reboot. It's about every 3 minutes. The mind kind of just has a natural hiccup.
Yeah.
And says, hey, we go, squirrel, nut.
Yeah. And guys like us, it's about every 3 seconds. So
yeah, probably.
If I'm not stimulated, right? So it's funny you say that, because like when I would see someone with a cat like crawl up on their neck and like get on there and then like get all comfortable in the middle of a Zoom, I would be like, oh my goodness. But then that's when everybody learned during COVID that all dogs in the world have a complicated relationship with Amazon trucks. You'd be in the middle of a really good conversation with people, and somebody's little dog or big dog would lose it. Then they'd be embarrassed, and then they'd be like, "Oh, good, my weighted blanket just came." Okay, so get your master's degree, and get us to like career path, and then how you end up being this incredibly engaging, witty, fun guy who provides a little bit of fuel in the tank for people.
Yes, I think doth exaggerate too much, but I'll take it. Here we go. I fortunately was able to teach the speech class and learn, one of the great, passions of my life. I love that quote in Richard Bach's book, Illusions, that we teach what we most need to learn. Mm. So here I am, still a wild, open-ended canvas, still needing a lot of painting to be done yet. And I step into the classroom at the College of DePage, a community college, and start coaching the speech team, working on some playwriting and developing with a partner of mine. And at the same time, start dabbling in stand-up. And at the same time, teaching about 4 sections of speech and coaching the high school speech team, because people knew at that time that I could do that, and I was good at that, and I was. And so that's how I went from eating grape nuts to eating golden grams. That's how I upgraded, right? Although no, they're both about the same. I would have to say that's how I went from eating golden grams to, let's say, bacon and eggs. How about that, right?
That's better, because grape nuts and golden grams cost the same. One's good, one's gross, and we'll let the audience decide.
Although you know what, my wife actually tested me whether or not I knew the difference between a generic grape nut and the actual grape nut. And I told her, I said, don't try to play me.
Don't do this again.
I go, don't do this. I said, because I'll tell you, I will. This box will be tossed permanently, and those are fighting words.
Yeah, when you slide in a Trader Joe fake cereal, it's war. Sometimes the brands have it down. Let's be honest, right? Yeah. It's not. I don't want Raisin Bran. I want Raisin Bran.
Exactly. So, as I'm teaching, I'm developing and workshopping some plays, comedy. I took some improv classes, and this is this concept that I try to share with people, that sometimes space and place offers opportunities that other students don't have, right? Mm-hmm. Location. I was probably connected to one of the top 3 comedy communities in the United States. At the same time, I'm only 30 to 40 minutes away from the preeminent improv training in the United States at Improv Olympic and Second City. Both of these are, supreme in what they do. At the same time, I never wanted to be. I chose not to. This is the first time I'm actually now in charge of my decision making, because they actually proffered or offered that I put my resume in for a full-time faculty position, right? Mm-hmm. And I was either dumb enough or smart enough to realize I wouldn't have been capable, given my kind of the thing that you had commented on, my impatience, my wanting to only do what I want to do, I don't think I would have suffered the needed and careful, thoughtful bureaucracies that are structured into schools for good reason. I mean, I'm not besmirching them. I just would not have functioned well in that kind of space. And so I chose this independent space in which essentially here I am in these analog MOOCs, so to speak, of improv, stand-up, play development, and really, I think the most powerful thing in the first 5 years is being forced to turn my speech class into what I really believe is maybe one of the primary, what's the word I'm looking for? Influences. The primary influence that turned me into the engagement artist, funny facilitator, experiential connector that I now am. And that was trying to figure out how I could reverse engineer, like I said, the teacher I never had into the students that I knew had so much firepower. And what I loved about the community college is you've got this haberdashery of students that, right? They're working at Burger King. Sometimes they're even taking care of their mom. Who knows, right? Sometimes you've got every scenario that you could possibly imagine in the area of struggle, and I want to figure this. I want to figure this world out and do something. And here I am. I think fundamentally offering up not just how to orally organize thoughts, but I at the same time was thinking about how can I structure a better self. So when you talk, you're talking from a base of truth, of transparency, of humility. And, you know, what I used to tell my students all the time, there's this horrible thing that speech teachers have taught for many years. And I'm going to say horrible. The minute a student says, or like, or, you know, they go, you know this, right? They go a little ape gaga. They write it down. They red mark it. And and what happens? What happens? Do they get rid of that? No, actually, the opposite happens. You codify that. You cement that as something that the student probably won't be able to get rid of very quickly. Right. And then guess what? Then they're not going to want to speak very often.
Correct.
And my first assignment was to ask the students to write down 5 things that bugged them about speaking, that they were afraid of, bothered them, or agitated them. And then they would ask me, well, how should we present this? To which my response was, however you damn please.
Right.
And, you know, Ted, you should see the look in their eyes. They were, I think they had more stress than if I would have asked them.
Yeah, there's two things. There's a great freedom that comes with that comment, but then it's like, well, wait a minute. School has given me a structure and a formula. It's A to B, B to C, C to D. And then you come across a guy like you who says, well, I don't care. You want to do an interpretive dance? You want to dress up like I don't care. Tell me the story however you want to tell the story.
Tell your story. Tell your story.
That's very freeing to a lot of people, and it's unnerving to the people who are good at playing school.
If you want your 8th grade class to shut up and be quiet, ask them an open-ended question that they don't know that they could have an answer to, but don't want to give.
Sure.
That'll make them quiet.
So much social posturing and shadow boxing in an 8th grade classroom. It's insane. Well, it's interesting that you said that about, you know, Tim, I went to Wisconsin's version of a community college. They were called center schools. And I have to be honest with you. I don't think, you know, I went to multiple universities after that. I never came across such an eclectic, weird, wonderful, like caring group of people like I did at my UW Center School. Like we had a professor who was from England who said, I had to leave Cambridge. Don't ask any questions. And this is pre-internet, right? So here's this man of mystery. I had a philosophy professor, Dr. Peterson, who had like 3 degrees, PhDs from Toronto, but clearly he was a misfit. So he's there. And there are all these amazing people who, what you just said, which I loved, because you said that with great empathy. The kid's working at Burger King. This one's taking care of his mom. They're just trying to move themselves into a space where they could be who they want to be. I sold cars full time, played soccer, and went to a 2-year community college full time, all at the same time. And every one of those professors was empathetic because they knew that this is kind of a merry band of misfits. This is the island of misfit toys here, and we're going to help these kids. So I really applaud you for that, and then what you learned from there. And then the other thing I was going to tell you as you were speaking is everybody needs a speech teacher like Mr. Clue. And I think the greatest improv comedians in the world fill our schools and just don't even know it. Because everything's moving at 100 miles per hour.
Yep.
And they're constantly responding and reacting. And I think why they're such good they're so good at improv is because they act like nothing bothers them. And that's why when guys like you come rolling into auditoriums with people like us, that laughter you bring us just drives us to the next level for the next day, next week, next month, next year.
Yeah, but I've made a major pivot. I often tell the story of feeling like Rip Van Winkle when in 2008 the corporate entertainment market shut down because the housing crisis exploded, and let's just say that impulse available money at the end of the counter was no longer in the budgets to bring in a comic soothsayer like myself. So fortunately, once again, inspiration, perspiration, and desperation collide, and now I'm back to teaching 10 years later after a 10 to 12 year pause.
Wow.
Right? I head back in the classroom with all the confidence and skill sets in the world. I was a sought after humorous motivational speaker, but largely to entertain, right? Mm-hmm. And I hadn't really moved I really hadn't had my next aha moment until you try to teach a class of millennials as a 50-year-old. And that gave me one of the simplest inspirations. I had put my PowerPoints together. I was so excited to re-enter and to test out all these great tools that I had been honing over the years. And I thought, this is going to be one of the easiest things I've ever done. And as with most stories like this, they changed my life. I hope I changed theirs, but they changed my life, right?
Yeah.
Because what happened was, no matter how entertaining I could be, I noticed that after a week or two, I could see the flies buzzing around their head, the dog staring into the fan, the deer in the headlights, right?
Yep.
And finally, one day, Ted, I took my advancer, the clicker that has the ultimate control of every thought you have, because those are your images that you want to impart to your students. And I threw it on the floor. And I said, something is seriously wrong. I don't know what is going on. And this class is canceled because we're not collaborating. We're not communicating. There is no connection here at all. Mm-hmm. And I'm not up here to dance like a monkey on a box for your entertainment. I don't mind being entertaining to convey and connect, but that method had run its route. I said, so unless someone wants to pick up this clicker and start clicking and tell me what the hell those slides are talking about, you can leave. You can all go. And you know what happened. 3 students walked up there. They took the clicker. They started clicking and explaining and laughing and figuring out. And guess what, Ted? I've never stood up in front of a classroom ever again in my life. I sit by the side and I let them stand up and lead and figure out. And we struggle and bumble and laugh. And we still get there. But guess what? It's unforgettable because it's an experience that they're sharing with each other. It's not a monologue carefully etched out with a few good jokes in between.
That's excellent. And on their part, it's discovery and it's risk and it's learning and it's teaching. Yeah. And it's like playing with fire, right? Because, and And the other thing, the courage for those students to step up and be like, okay, let's see what happens. Right.
Let's see what happens.
And that's that great video, right? With the one guy out dancing on the hill and all of a sudden 100 people are dancing with him 10 minutes later. It just takes the one.
Happy accidents, right?
Yep. So tell me, and we're going to wrap up here in a couple minutes, but tell me a little bit about your discomfort zone that I see you talk about and people who've seen you talk about, like, we're going to enter the discomfort zone. Like, what do you mean by that?
It's funny. I don't know if you've watched you're going to be surprised where I take this. I don't know if you watched the HBO series. It's about the cult in the Schenectady area called The Vow. Have you heard about this, Ted?
I've heard about it. I have not watched it though.
So I watched it and I realized that, wow, I realized that something that I believe in wholeheartedly was actually used as a way to strip people of their will and make them a part of a cult. So I'm almost a little embarrassed to highlight this, but the vow is like watching 7 car accidents at the same time in slow motion. So enjoy that. However, I do think that basically, the more you offer students the opportunity to slow the pitch down or enter the controlled burn that fire people need to do before they actually enter a live fire, the more you're stretching that natural capability to be both uncomfortable and figure out how to gain control. I think that's the word I want to use more operationally, right? Gain control over all those undulating vibrations that are firing in your brain, like when you speak and you're like, oh, I've got dry mouth. Oh, my hair is standing on end. My eyes are tiny, and you start thinking about every weakness that you have instead of actually just bringing it down to what it is that you'd like to get across. So that's what I believe in. That with that we need to provide kids of all stripes, ages, experiences that keep them both off balance, and yet there's still something familiar out there that they can look at and go, you know what, this is okay. I can be uncomfortable and at the same time figure out why I'm uncomfortable and how to maintain control. And that is the essence of SEL, LOL, social emotional learning, is that once you have the humility to figure out that mistakes are at the precipice of opportunity, and that falling forward is the reinvention of a canvas that you messed up, and you're not afraid to repaint it again. These are these universal truths, and that make us both kings, queens, warriors, and capable of helping others do the same.
I honestly thought you were going to quote Bob Ross there.
Well, happy accidents.
Happy
right?
accidents. You were right there.
I was right there.
Tim,
I should have.
Yeah, that was excellent. And one of the things that we talk about on the podcast all the time is we define leadership as anyone who has influence over another person. You get into grad school, you start focusing on what's a leader, and everybody starts pointing out human beings, or they write 17 pages of all the different acumens and qualities. At the end of the day, we boil it down. I boil it down to just a simple: every moment of every day you can change the direction of another person, and your influence is what matters. And as long as you lead wherever your feet are, you're going to be amazed by the ability you have to, on a micro and macro level, change the direction of people. And with that, tell me, like, when you're in front of audiences, whether those be your students or in the past, or like, big audiences doing, motivational pieces, what does it feel like for you with the energy and knowing that you're influencing others' engagement and shifting their directions? It
was an interesting move from, comedy, improv, corporate entertainment. And then I stumbled into someone asked me, hey, do you ever would you speak to our teachers at the school? And I said, yeah. And then I realized I had nothing to say. And I mean it, that everything that I had ever said, every joke that I'd ever done. And I stayed up for all night. And then I walked in and just started doing what we just did right here.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought, well, I'll do a few improv bits with them and I'll tell them my story in between. And when that discovery occurred, that unleashed this idea that we are co-collaborators and connectors. We are inherently put on this earth to be not just next to people, but try to figure out how to help ourselves be better and help those others be better with us. And that's when I made the shift to like, well, wait a minute. What if it wasn't a presentation? I'm an instigator, right?
Yeah.
And when I got off the stage, and just like I did with the advancer or the clicker and threw it down and then got into the center of the group, I suddenly felt a calm, like a fish in water. I don't know if you know this about autistic children, and do you know that that the reason they tell them to have compression blankets is because that weight gives them a sense of calm, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It literally neurologically changes the synapses and how they connect.
Mm-hmm.
And I swear to you, Ted, when I moved off the stage way away from people and moved into the center, I found my compression blanket. And I found that vibration was that pebble that fell into the water that had ripples, and not just because of me, but because of us. And that was the pivot that brought me to this conversation today.
When you were speaking, I wrote something down because I think that you have a really cool formula for what you do, and I really admire it. And like I started out, I have two guys born caffeinated with the gift of attention deficit. When I speak with groups, I'm the same way. Like I want a cordless mic. I don't want a stage. I'm moving around the tables. Lots of time on the feedback, people will complain. I didn't know where the front of the room was. And
right.
I just love that. But when you said this, I think I'm capturing the Tim Clue formula as vulnerability with brutal honesty, with tragedy, can create the comedy and inspiration for the people who work with kids to remember just how unique everybody is, and that everything that we have a label for is actually just an OFI, just an opportunity for improvement. And I love that. And I love how you phrase that. I love how you said it. And I'm just proud of what you do.
Thank you, man. Drop the mic, here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. So the last question I have for you is this. What do you find to be the greatest hurdle you face when you are working with teachers, educators, people sometimes falling into healthcare, et cetera, when they come into the room? Because a lot of times what I look forward to getting over the hurdle of is there's lots of have to people in the room. Like I have to be here. And then I always tell them my goal for you is by the time we're over that you say to yourself, I got to be in the room today.
Yeah.
Well, how do you mentally prep? What's your mindset?
I had a football coach come up to me and said, I brought the newspaper in today to either pretend to read, or nap. And dang it, I didn't get to do any of those. Thank you.
Best compliment, right?
You know what? I took it. It might be on my tombstone, right? So now, first off, I say this, Ted, with so much admiration, love, and celebration of education and teachers, and I do mean administrators in this ecosystem as well, because I learned that leadership is imperative to allow the art of teaching to exist. And but with that said, to answer your question, there's no child that can become a connected communicator, leader, a curiosity, a curious curator of curiosity for the rest of his life if that kid doesn't see role models that are willing to connect and engage. And what's ironic, and I say this with love and kindness in my heart, educators, is that if you want to have a room of, 200 independent CEOs with their 8-foot offices, try to speak to a bunch of high school teachers, because I'll tell you right now, they will have their laptops. They will do everything possible in every way to be like, yeah. And you know what? I don't blame them. It's learned helplessness. And ironically, what they don't understand, Ted, it's the same thing that happens in their classroom at times with their students, right?
Tim, you are speaking to the choir, because here's the deal. When you work with elementary teachers, they're like really kind and open, and they're afraid to be like confrontational. You get to middle school, and then the middle school teachers, they're great people. They're a little too energetic. They ask too many questions.
Yeah.
Where's this from? Whose idea was this? And then you get to high school, and God bless them, because I was a high school teacher. You've never been in a room of smarter people in their own view ever. And they don't understand why they have to do anything. And we've actually built confederacies for them to protect themselves in departments. Yeah. But everybody acts at the level of which they work. Elementary people act like elementary kids. Middle school teachers act like middle school kids. High school teachers act like high school teachers.
Well, I think high school teachers are traumatized. And that's a whole nother podcast. I'm sorry, we can't go there. Yeah. But they're, we know that they're underappreciated. And under-medicated. I think that's what we know. I think unfortunately in the world we live in right now, that everybody working in the public sector is in a position of too often being criticized, and then creating a story in their head that they're undervalued, and you are and they are. So, but I cut you off. You hit such a chord with that question, and I can answer it so easily. The number one struggle is to transition every mind of all kind into an engagement mindset, And that is being vulnerable enough, happy enough, and capable enough to enter the fog, to enter the fog of right or wrong, to participate in the happy accident, to struggle to gain control of awkwardness, and to experience capacity when you reflect upon it. And teachers are sometimes the least willing to step into that, onto that stage, into that moment.
Yeah, because it's just
sometimes they don't.
They're getting hit from
Bailey,
so many
you want to be on
moments.
my podcast? You want to meet Ted?
You're on a podcast?
Yes, this is Ted Knightsky. And he speaks to, my daughter was come here, Bailey, come here. I want to tell you a quick, come here. No,
come on.
Come here.
Come on, Bailey, get on it.
So,
hey, Bailey.
Listen, sit here. Don't spaz out. Okay, why are you doing that? Okay, very good. Sit down, dork. I want to tell a quick, sweet story about you. Tell Mr. Knightsky why how you came to us. You're adopted. Do you know why? I've told you the story.
Magic.
No. Do you remember why? What did your birth mother say? Her mother and I adopted her, and we wrote on the form. Now listen up. We wrote on the form, we're ADD, OCD, living together in perfect disharmony.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
And I mentioned that I suffered. It was a learning challenge, left-handed dyslexic rugrat. What are you doing?
I need to.
No, you're not going to be on the phones. The screen. You're like, this is going to be.
Fine, I'll talk to you later.
No, stay here. Here it is. And Bailey has in seventh grade, and she's reading at a seventh grade level. But in third grade, she was reading at a first grade level, and she's getting great grades, all A's and B's. And her birth mother was. I'm gonna get a little emotional here, but she was so. Profound that because she had dyslexia and some learning challenges, she chose us to raise Bailey because she wanted parents that would have empathy for that
Oh, that's really cool.
situation.
That's really cool.
Now you can go.
Yay!
Wave goodbye to the people.
Bye-bye, Bailey. That's a great story.
Isn't that amazing?
That's a whole nother podcast right there. Adoption, love, caring.
Well, and also, you know what? My wife hesitated. She's like, "Should we really make that our first line on our, everyone who's ever adopted? You have to tell people who you are, right?"
Right.
And I said, "You know what? We're going to put it out there, and the world is going to give us exactly back the kid we want to raise," and that's what happened.
That's beautiful. I tell you, Tim, in the hour here that we've been hanging out together, you've really demonstrated one of my favorite qualities about people, and it's authenticity. And it's something that, we strive for our own children, the people we work around. And before you touched upon engagement, and I truly believe that I individually own my own engagement, my own happiness, and the ability to be authentic. It's such a gift. And, just barely meeting you, I'm really proud of you. And our podcast is about this very specific type of leadership called Buffalo leadership. And what Buffalo leadership means is basically when we see a storm coming, we charge into it. And it's the fastest way to get through whatever problems that we're facing. And you have just consistently demonstrated over and over and over, here is how I charge into those storms, whether that be your first day at Bradley, in that philosophy class or psych class, asking questions, getting booed, and just learning to advocate for yourself. And then at the same time, authentically reinventing yourself multiple times to the current state that you're at. So that's really cool and good for you.
Oh, gosh, I got to call my mom. I'm getting a little teary-eyed here.
Yeah, if you want me, we'll send her the podcast at the end there.
Thank you.
But I'm going to end it with your quote and ask you to respond to it. So you said before, we teach what we most need to learn. And I wrote that down, and then I followed it, which is and maybe that's why teachers teach kids, so we can learn about life.
I absolutely.
That was awesome.
Absolutely. The things that we need and the things that we can impart are almost the same things. I really believe that. And it's the birthplace of invention, reinvention, and it's the place where the classroom succeeds and breathes and is a special place. And I just wish that the rest of the United States understood there's a deficit in our awareness of the value of minds of all kinds and the great art of teaching it takes to bring them forth. I wish we were higher up on the chat GPT-3 results that let's just say we're not in the seventh slot, Ted, in terms of understanding the need for more counselors, more therapy, more more problem-based learning teachers, and every kind of instructor you could possibly imagine. And what's scary is that if we were to invest in that investment would return to us tenfold. Mm-hmm. There's no money that could be spent. It was very funny when we started getting tutors for my kid. That the price can run up pretty quickly, right? When you my wife just had a momentary hiccup, and she's like, what about our college fund? And I said, guess what? You don't need a college fund if your kid can't get into college.
Right.
Well, but what I'm saying is I wish my point is, I wish there's a wonderful documentary about early education. It's called No Small Matters. If you're an early education teacher, please just go grab it and watch it right now. No Small Matters. It's just so beautiful and powerful. And it teaches us what they know in Finland and in Germany and Norway. These are the most lauded and appreciated and educated teachers are the ones teaching 3-year-old to 8-year-olds.
I think you just hit on something, Tim, as we close out here. That's really important is if weirdly in the United States, we love to fix versus prevent.
Ah,
We are annoyed by fire inspectors and we love firefighters.
ha, beautiful. Oh, preach.
Yeah, speak.
Preach.
Speak. Oh my God. We're doing this every night. But that's what it drives me wild. We don't want to spend money on 4K, but we'll spend a ton of money trying to recover a junior in high school who has completely lost their motivation, is struggling with their teachers. And like you said, some of the teachers need that therapy because, they're inheriting the end of the spectrum, and it's a bunch of people who have become disengaged or disenfranchised.
We can eradicate dyslexia with early diagnosis, just like blindness is very rare now. They understand it. The reading of science has arrived, and it's really powerful what happened to my daughter, and it can happen to every kid in the United States and the world, to be honest. But it does take a focus, a commitment, and an understanding that is, I think, necessary, but I think still not. We're not there. We're not there.
But at the end of the day, like yours narrative says, you ran into some great teachers who sparked. You ran into some great professors who diagnosed and put us in this position to be here, two guys talking into microphones who statistically should not be doing this.
Yes, we are the exception to the rule. We're the thing that slipped through the cracks, right? But that's what I love what you said about Island of Misfit Toys. I believe every educator came. Oh, can I end with this? I'm going to tell you.
Please.
Okay. The 1961 version of the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer cartoon that you referred to about the Island of Misfit Toys. Do you know that in the original version that Kodak put out, Santa goes over the island and waves to the Island of Misfit Toys and says, ho, 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 and begins to distribute the other toys to the children. He passes over the island of Misfit Toys.
Final shot.
Yeah. And it kind of, he snubs them. It's a Santa snub. and what ensued is a 1 million letter writing campaign, over 1 million letters, almost all from children and obviously parents that helped, that said, hey, you know what? Santa needs to give all the gifts to all the children all over the world. And then they went back and they redid it, where Santa lands his little cart, grabs the gifts, puts them on the sleigh, and heads forth.
It saves the day.
That's the pivot point that we are at. Santa can't head over the Island of Misfit Toys and wave anymore and say, ho, 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 all is well.
I love it.
That chapter has ended.
I hope I get a Charlie in the box.
Everyone needs a Charlie in the box. Everybody.
Tim, thanks for joining me on the Smart Thinking podcast. I look forward to seeing you at Spring into Success. And this was truly a joyous evening for me. And like I said, it was fun. We got to do a little improv, little laughing, little thinking, little research. And you really are a gift to the world. So thank you.
Oh, be quiet, friend. You are too. This is my favorite 54 minutes in the last year. So, take that and put it in your happy pipe and smoke it.
So let's do some smart thinking. I just have one reflection for you after that incredible conversation I had with Tim, and that is this. When he said, we teach what we most need to learn, what did that mean to you? That's it. That's the Smart Thinking Podcast. Hey, as always, thank you for listening, and please make sure to share and rate this episode. I really do appreciate the time that you give to these podcasts each week so that you can learn and grow. And I think this conversation is an excellent example of a million different things that we can take away from my conversation with Tim and implement in our own leadership all of the time so we can grow stronger and charge into the storms that we're facing. And as always, thank you to the Well Pennies for their awesome music that they give us permission to use each week. Okay, as we close out here, I just really want you to reflect upon when you run into interesting people. Like my conversation with Tim, I did not think that was what was going to happen, and I could not have had more fun. I actually texted Jean Marie, a woman I work with, who had set up Tim as our speaker, and said that if she, myself, and Tim got in a car, we would go for a ride and forget where we were going. And people like him fuel me. I hope it fueled you. And I want you to remember one thing as you head into your week this week, and that's that every child that we have the privilege to be around, every person that we get to serve, has a unique story, and all we have to do is just take a moment to practice the greatest quality of leadership, which is empathy, and be curious and wonder, who is this person and how can I help them?
Would you say when I'm gone away, my lover came to me, and we lay in rooms unfamiliar, but until now, until now, until now. Would you say to me when I'm gone, I loved your son for his sturdy arms, and we both learned to cradle and live without, live without, live without. Would you say when I'm gone away, your father's body was Judgment Day, and we both dove and rose to the riverside, riverside.